Welcome to Northpointe Conversations. We're really glad that you're with us today. I have a special guest and someone that maybe you have never met or maybe even heard of before. Shari Montgomery is the founder, director, chief cook and bottle washer for the House of Promise. And so we asked Shari to come and just be a part of the conversation so that you guys who are part of Northpointe can learn about a really important ministry that is really kind of just right in our backyard. So welcome, Shari.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I first met you, you probably don't remember, before House of Promise existed, when it was just a concept. And there was kind of an open meeting at Redeemer Church.
Yes.
That was just an informational meeting. I was there that night, and we talked a little bit afterwards. So
that was a long time ago.
That was probably 8 or 9 years ago.
Probably about 8.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what's the background? Like, what is your history before House of Promise, and then kind of how you got there?
So I started owning a glass company called Pollock Glass Company, and that was a family-owned business for many years. And my plan was I was just going to retire from that, work a few hours a week, and that was my life. And in 2007, I heard a missionary talk about how girls by the age of 3 were sold into sex slavery, and by 18, if they were still alive, they would be sold into sex or just labor, slavery, or something else. And so I always wondered how you got called into a ministry.
Yeah.
And I now I know, because that night something broke inside of me, and I just said, God, I have to be a part of the solution if I can even save one girl. And I didn't know what that looked like. I thought that meant I was going overseas. And so fast forward, it wasn't until 2013, I just kind of moved on with my life, but God would bring people into my life through those years and just say, hey, I want you to meet this person, or I want you to meet this person. And God was just laying this foundation for me.
Yeah, we it's funny, at Northpointe, one of the phrases that we talk about is how God works upstream, that before you ever get to the place that you are now, God's put pieces in place long ago. And so that's what was happening at that point.
Oh, yeah. and as I moved along, I mean, I make this joke, but I was pretty serious for me. I'm like, Papa God, I don't get it. You're going to move me to Nepal or something. Or I'm thinking because that's where trafficking was, right? That's what we thought. And I'm like, I just have this deathly fear of spiders. And I'm like, you know this, right, God? Remember me?
Yeah.
And I remember talking to this one missionary from Nepal, and I said, so how big are the spiders over there? I mean, it's top of mind to me. And he's like, oh, the size of a small Frisbee. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
I'm like, do you shoot them, or what do you do? And he's looking at me like I'm crazy, and I'm looking at God like, are you crazy? What are we doing? But as the time moved on, I realized I wasn't going anywhere. I realized I was going to be in the United States, and then I realized I was going to be right here in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that those are the things that he got me to do. He had me go to Tennessee, Atlanta, different places that didn't take trafficking, but they took abused.
Oh, women in an
because
abusive situation.
Yeah, because back then there was no such thing as houses for sex trafficking. So, for me to go interview a bunch of people that have them, it wasn't even heard of yet. Now it's a buzzword, but it really wasn't then. And so then I went to, the 2013, I started a board, started my nonprofit,
And you're still working glass at this point in time.
Yes. I ended up, like I said, I never planned on selling my company. And it ended up, I was working on some legislation, which was a huge stretch for me too. But it was one of the other glass companies that I was working with said, I want to buy you. And I'm like, I'm not for sale, I don't think. Because now I'm thinking, okay, what are you doing, God? And he just wasn't going to let me walk away from the deal. God made it very plain. I was not going to be in the glass business anymore. And so it's funny because I worked there a couple years with them to help them transition. But when I left, I was there for 40 years. It was my life since I was 16 years old. And so, but when I left, I was like all in to the House of Promise. It was only less than a year that I ended up buying the house that we're in. And that was God showing me this house. And I prayed that house in for like 5 years. And I just kept getting these people would go, that's your house. It just, and when I'd be praying for it, God kept confirming. Like one time I was, a real estate agent had called me and said, hey, I got a house I want you to look at. And I'm like, I found my house, they just don't know it yet. And
there's a family living there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there was a bed and breakfast at that point.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
And they were not doing real well financially there, but they weren't really willing to sell. And then it was going to go into bankruptcy. And I was trying to talk to all these people like, I want this house, and nobody would talk to me. And we didn't really have a lot of money in the beginning when I first started talking, but I just kept fundraising and saving money. And then the real estate agent came up to me and said, hey, I found this house. And I said, I think I found a house. And, I just pulled over to the side of the road and I just started crying. And I'm like, Papa God, I don't care where I'm at or what. Just tell me. I had board members say, just start small. Yeah. And I'm like, talk to God, because he's the one that's pointing me this way. So I don't know what to do. I have to follow God, because I don't know what I'm doing without him. And so, it was a while later, a girl called me and she said, I don't know what you're asking God, but God wanted me to tell you he's a good God. And when he tells you you have something, and don't back away.
Wow.
And I never let go of that house after that until, fast forward a little further, the house sold and I didn't get it. And that was just devastating to me. And so I'm looking at my faith and I'm going, I believed you for 5 years holding on to this. And God asked me, are you still gonna follow me without this house?
That's good.
And I
let me just pause for a second in the story. So at this point in time, you've got this concept of helping women who are in the sex industry come out.
Yeah.
Were things happening, or was it you had this vision, but you hadn't taken any steps until you could get the house?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
I still would go to seminars and different things that I could learn from.
You were doing it in the preparation phase.
Yep. I was still doing anything that I knew how to do or what God would tell me to do.
Yeah.
So then I go back to I find out the house is sold, and God asks me, are you still going to follow me? And I had to be honest. He knew what my heart was. You can say whatever. He knows what your heart is.
Right.
And I said, Papa, I need you, but I don't know if I can trust you. I had put all my faith into this, and now that was gone. But what he was teaching me was that I started making it more about the house and the girls.
Wow.
So, I'm fighting for this house for 5 years and I'm doing all this. It started to be more about the house and the girls.
Yeah.
And so this journey I'm going with. And so finally the board talks me into, move on, Shari. The house is sold. People are living in there. So I made an offer, because we'd been saving all this money for this. So I made an offer on 20 acres of property in this area, and we decided we were going to build. Well, the day that I made the offer on the house, the people that owned the house called me and said, we don't know why you didn't get this house, but it's not our house. It's supposed to be yours. Do you want it?
Wow.
So we ended up closing on it probably in 3 to 4 months from that.
And when was that? What year?
That I closed December of 17.
Wow. And so that then started, then did you have to do a lot of modifications to the house?
No,
it was all ready to go.
They did it while
the family who had bought it.
Yeah. Isn't that just like God?
Wow, yeah.
So, and actually, I was asking for one of the things I was asking for this big table that would seat 8 to 10 girls, with staff and everything in there. They built it while they were there because they have this huge family.
Wow.
It was just so cool. It was so God.
Wow. So then this ministry starts that's called the House of Promise.
Yes.
And it's designed to help women come out of the sex trafficking industry.
Yeah.
So they're prostitutes or film or anything?
All of the, so we take severely sexually abused and sex trafficked victims, okay? And what the House of Promise definition is of severely sexually abused is when you're 3 years old and you're looking at daddy, and daddy's your protector, your world, your everything, and he becomes your predator. So he's either selling you at 3 or he's raping you at 3.
Wow.
3 to 5. That's so what I tell people if in the Christian world, if the devil wants to take a woman out, when do you think he's going to do it? He's going to do it by the age of 3 to 5 because he's probably taking them out for life.
Right. Because
those are the informative years. And so that's severely sexually abused to me, to us.
Yeah.
And then sex trafficked is being sold, and most of the time, what we think what trafficking is the girls walking down the streets and that, but 44% of trafficked victims are sold by either mom or dad.
Really?
Only 3% is like the movie Taken, where someone is kidnapped off the street. And then the rest is boyfriend, someone that they've trusted, something along the line. They've got them hooked on drugs or whatever. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So, when I go into this, I'm thinking it's people that's been taken and they've been, chained somewhere. And that does happen. I mean, I've had, I think, 3 girls that have been chained somewhere in a place and held hostage. But a good portion of them are mom and dad.
Wow. That's horrible.
That's why we need the church.
Yeah.
We as the body of Christ have, we've gotten so secular. I think, look at how much there's divorce and all of this stuff. And you don't get me on my soapbox. I'll be careful. But it's like, little girls need their daddies. They need their daddies. And if they don't find daddy at home, a solid man that's going to teach them how a man should treat a woman, they have no idea. And so these girls are going out there and they're finding what they can, and it's sad. And so it's us as the Christian community to come back to those foundations and show our children what love is supposed to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking on so many different levels right now, just in terms of thinking about what you're doing in helping rebuild and restore, and families who are healthy, what they can add to the picture in terms of being a model, to be able to say, this is what health looks like.
Yep.
Because for somebody who's never experienced that, they think that what they've grown up in is normal.
Yeah, it's normal.
That is normal. And so there really is a challenge on lots of different levels to help healthy families allow to bring people in to experience what normal is, so that they just have this glimpse of saying, oh, what I've grown up in is that there is something else. There is something more than that. So in 17, you buy the house and the ministry starts.
March of 18, we took our first girl.
And how many women have you had in the House of Promise?
I probably should have looked before I came
That's okay.
here, but
Rough numbers.
almost 50.
Almost 50 in the last 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And how long do they typically stay? And what happens there?
So we've with me not knowing what I'm doing, I can tell you anything about glass still, but so
That's so great, Shari.
it's like I can tell you anything about a windshield, but these are girls, these are broken girls, and these are God's children, and you know, it took a while for me to even know what I'm doing. I don't have a college education, so I'm going in there with what God has given me, and so it's been trial and error. And so in the beginning, girls wouldn't stay very long. They can stay up to 2 years.
Okay.
We have some that do. It's kind of fun now after 6 years, though. Now it's like we're kind of saying to the girls, okay, it's time to leave. Time to leave. You know, we have more of those than we ever have. And so that means we've grown a lot. I'm so proud of the staff we have.
Yeah.
But the hardest part is finding the balance of love, of boundaries, of tough love. You know, it's all of those things. You know, you think of these girls that are very broken. They've lived their whole life to manipulate and whatever it takes to survive. And so they're going to use all those skills in this house. So that's one thing.
Wow.
Then we're dealing with drugs, alcohol abuse. And what I didn't realize what we're going to deal with is the severe mental illness.
Huh.
When you have girls that have gone through the trauma that they've gone through, their brain has done. God created our brain to be so amazing, and it does what it needs to do to protect.
To cope, yeah. Absolutely.
And so we're dealing with that. We're dealing with multiple personalities, you know, and all of the PTSD, trauma, night terrors. I mean, so they're in all these different meds that, you know, we had to learn about, all that stuff that, you know, it's amazing. I mean, we don't ever have there's never a boring day at the House of Promise, ever, you know, because of all the different personalities and everything. But yeah.
And how many can you accommodate in the house?
The way we're set up right now, we could accommodate 9. You know, when I was opening up, you know, when I'd look at the different licensed places, you know, everybody was at 6. I'm like, cocky little me says, 6? Why can't we do 10? I'm going to do 10. Yeah. We're at 7, and if I took one more right now, I'd probably lose staff. It's a lot. It's like drinking out of a fire hose every day when you've got that, you know, put women without trauma in a room alone for
you could say that. I can't say that, but you could say that.
Yeah. And then put trauma in there and PTSD and schizophrenia and all of those things. And it's a lot.
So what does a normal day or week, as if there's normal, but what happens typically during a day or during a week or during a cycle of a woman being at House of Promise?
So when they come in their first 30 days, and we're getting better at that, we're actually putting another piece of it in there where we're getting more, we just set up to get some more psychiatric evaluation when they come in for us to be able to deal more with that. We just partnered with someone that's very exciting to us.
Yeah.
But they come in the first 30 days. It's more of just assessing them, letting them just breathe, letting them feel safe. We tell them we're faith-based. So if they are Christian, you know, we do things like watch The Chosen, things to show them the love of Jesus. And then they're taught things like we give them curriculum, like teach them healthy boundaries. And, you know, again, you know, I had to learn healthy boundaries. Still, I'm learning healthy boundaries. So someone like them, it's even more, you know. So we do that. Conflict resolution, different things like that. They get They have chores they have to do. So it's teaching them life skills, teaching them, yes, you do have to clean your room. Yes, you do have to clean your bathroom. If you don't, it gets disgusting. And it's like, it's things that we think is normal, but those things, we have to walk alongside a lot of the girls that have no idea how to do those things.
Yeah. Is there an element that the life that they come from continues to pull on them? Like, is there either people, not just within themselves, but are there people who are trying to bring them back?
Yeah. Not so much people wanting to bring them back. Usually when they come to us, people give up and walk away, like if they have a pimp or something. Yeah. Most of them will walk away. But family members, a lot of times, they're washing their hands of them because they've been so trying with them. I keep bumping that. But it's, they're safe. I guess I want to tell you a story. This would be good.
Absolutely.
So this was one of my girls. It was like maybe my fourth or fifth girl. So we're really green yet. Mm-hmm. And we had gotten a call from my mentor that said this young lady she was in San Diego, I think, and she needs help. And I'm like, okay, we've got a bed. If someone wants to bring her here, that's fine. And so they flew her here. She comes in and she is severely mental struggles. She doesn't know how to use a stove. She doesn't know how to turn on a stove. She's 18 years old, 19 years old. She doesn't know how to use a gas stove. She won't sleep in a bed because she's never been allowed to sleep in a bed unless she was servicing a man. She slept in her closet most of the time or on the floor. Had no idea how to use a toilet. We had a lot of problems with the toilet overflowing and everything. She did not know how to use that. She been since a child had trauma like this, and so she went to church the first week with us. She gave her life to the Lord, which I think every one of our girls that have come into the house have.
Wow, that's great.
And that's amazing.
Yeah.
So she gave her life to the Lord, and it was, and then the next week she said to me about halfway through the week, Miss Shari, I can't do this. I got to go back, and I'm like, you want me to fly you back to your pimp? And it's like, what do you do with that? I mean, I can't force her to stay.
Yeah.
But she was so damaged. I mean, she put a couple holes in the walls. I mean, she was really a messed up young lady. And so I flew her back to her pimp. And I promised her when she left, I hugged her and I said, you call at any time. I'll bring you back 100 times if that's what it takes. And she pulled me back and she said, why? Why you? Nobody's cared if I've been alive or dead my whole life. Why you? And how do you explain that? I just said, because Jesus put it in me to love you, and I love you. And so she leaves. And she'd call us like almost every other day, and she'd be walking on the streets or something, and then all of a sudden we didn't hear from her anymore. So we go on, fast forward a year, I tell one of my staff, I want you to start tracking down some of the girls that left. Well, it was the next week after I stopped talking to her, she died. And she got hit by a car. And I'm so grateful God protected me for that, because if I would have found that out right away, I would have thought, failure, failure, failure. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But after a year, and after the Lord teaching me so much more stuff, her life was never going to be anything, but she was with Jesus. Yeah. She's with Jesus now. Yeah. And that's all God wanted me to do. It's like what he said, Shari, well done. Yeah. That's all I needed you to do is for her to meet me. And so I hold on to that a lot of times. Yeah. And that's where a lot of our girls are. Some of them are. I have a young lady now that is struggling a lot with the mental, illness, and it's their trauma.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about your staff. How big is your staff? What do they do?
I have about 12, I think, a lot of part-time. There's only 3 or 4 of us that are full-time. Staff is amazing. We're hiring right now. And
Who knows how you ended up on this podcast and what God might do. Yeah.
And we're looking for women that are of faith to walk alongside of them. And that's really, our staff does life with them. They're we call them resident advocates, and they really are the moms. They're the ones that, that make sure they're up in the morning, that they give them their meds at their certain times. Yeah. They're helping them cook if they if they're cooking something. They're making sure they get their chores done. They're holding on to them when they're having a flashback or wiping tears and walking through things that maybe in a normal world would be a 10-year-old you're walking through, but you're walking it through with a 30-year-old or sometimes even a 40-year-old because of the damage that people have done to them.
Yeah, it's funny as you describe what you do. I remember it's probably been 30 years ago reading an article about children of Vietnam vets. And the thing that I remember from the article was that the guys who had served in Vietnam that experienced the trauma of war, that their emotional development stopped at that point in time. Really? So it was guys who now have teenagers, student ministry stuff, that might be 35 or 40 years old, but are emotionally 18 or 19 years old. Yeah. And the impact that had on kids as they grew up with an 18 or 19-year-old dad, and the impact of that on ministry. And what you're describing is that same principle, that if you've got a woman who has experienced trauma at some point in time that's so severe that their emotional growth stops, that then they may have a physical body that's 25 or 30 years old, but they're really 10 or 12 or 14. Yep. There's lots of consequence, lots of impact that comes from that.
That's really interesting. You said that about the vets. That would make a lot of sense, and especially since I do live in that world of that trauma. That you're absolutely right. Their brains stop. Yep. I mean, they're still going to learn certain things, but
still skills
it's
it's funny because the reason that article made so much sense to me was because we had kids in our youth group that we were dealing with that their dad was a Vietnam vet who was incredibly intelligent, working in a high level responsibility job that impacted the nation. We were outside Washington, D.C., and there were these boys that, like, they were the stuff that they were dealing with because dad was still emotionally, even though he was married, everything looked okay on the outside, there was still stuff there that was a mess because of what he experienced in Vietnam. Yeah.
And we have to remind our staff of that all the time. Yeah. You're standing in front of an adult, but they're not acting like an adult. Right. But they want to be treated like an adult. And you so many times you want to say, if you want to be treated like an adult, act like an adult. Right.
But they don't know how.
They don't. They know how they've survived.
Right. Wow. So and some more stories, some fun stories in terms of how God has worked, how God has used House of Promise to help some women heal.
There was, wow. We had this one lady that we took from prison. She just had come out and she was tough. But she'd been trafficked. She ended up in a bad situation because of that. She did the time for the pimp, all of that. So she comes in and she's tough. And she comes in and one of the things is her one hand, she can only use these 2 fingers, her thumb and the one finger. I think it's the rest of them. Her tendons had been cut through something that had happened to her, so she had no use of them. Her hand was always cold, and so she always had a glove on that hand. And she didn't really believe in God. and all of that, mad at God, all of that.
Yeah.
So I take her to this thing at Gilead in Lansing. I can't think of the name of the lady that was coming to speak. But anyway, this lady comes to speak. She's behind me. The girl's behind me. She just accepted Jesus into her life with the other ladies in the house prayed a prayer for her the night before, right? I don't even know she's done that yet. And she's sitting behind me, and all of a sudden she starts praying fluently in tongues.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm turning around, and she's just going at it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. And she stops, and she goes, what the was that? I mean, she just stops, and it's like, I don't know. You tell me. She's like, and so she decides to get water baptized that night. So I get to water baptize her. The next day, we go back to the conference, and she's in the back of the room, and all of a sudden her hand gets super hot, and she's starting to freak out because she doesn't know what's going on, but the Lord healed her hand.
Wow.
She could move all her fingers. So, I don't get a lot of those kind of things, but when we get them, we take them. It's awesome. But, those are the things that are the girls that start trusting God, that they start realizing that God didn't do it to them. It's when they're like, where was God? It's like, ask him. He'll show you. He'll tell you. He didn't leave you.
Yeah.
And so it's them healing through that. Watching them go through that is amazing. But I would like to share that one of the things that we are starting to learn about when you said what's new is this one's kind of a scary one for me. Is we had one girl that came in. It's been a couple years now. It was through COVID when it first started.
Yep.
She was homeless. And we got her. She's a pediatrician from Florida, and she's a victim of satanic ritual abuse. Mm-hmm. And so she knew she had parts, so she knew she had multiple personalities her whole life, but she was on the top of her field. She worked with children. Yeah. And then all of a sudden at 37, all her memories came flashing back.
Oh, wow.
She lost everything. And so we get her, and I'm trying to figure out what's satanic ritual abuse. We all probably think we know what it is, and we've heard a little, and so God's like, okay, I'm going to take you on a journey. And so we've been learning from that. She did really well with us, and she left, and she's living on her own. She has struggled a few times now that I've had to go back and help her and get her some help. And right now I have found a therapist, or like we call her an encourager, that the state doesn't pay for anything, but it's someone that's walking her through some of the curses and the satanic things that are put on these people that I have had no idea. And I'm watching her just flourish.
Wow.
It's crazy. And we're getting more of them. And so now we're getting known a little bit around the country that we'll take these ladies. Wow. And I'm learning the last Rescue America just told me the statistics are 30% of traffic victims are also victims of satanic ritual abuse. That's huge.
Yeah, a third. Yeah.
And a lot of it starts when the child is still in the womb. So they start to torture the child in the womb to give them split personalities and all those cool things that the Satanists like to do.
Yikes. We live in a broken world.
Crazy world.
But
I'm learning it. And, it's scary. And I don't, I can't talk about that part outside of the Christian world.
Yeah.
And so that makes me sad.
Yeah.
But, if anything, please be praying for us, because we're in an area that I don't know that much about, but I'm going to walk with the Lord with it.
Let me go back to just some stuff that you've mentioned that all of a sudden for me, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. So the ladies who come to you, they may come from anywhere in the country, not just Lansing.
Nope.
That's good to know. And the house, describe the house in terms of its setting, because Like I know where it is because we've had opportunities as a church to come in and help do things on the grounds. We've got an opportunity, I think this Saturday, that we've got a crew that's coming to just help get it ready for summer, that kind of thing. So describe the house and the grounds and that kind of stuff.
So it was an old bed and breakfast. So it's this huge house. It's
Big old farmhouse.
Big old farmhouse.
Yeah.
It's I think it's about 5,000 square feet, maybe 6,000. It's 3 floors. Beautiful, beautiful home. The grounds are absolutely gorgeous. They used to do weddings on it. And so I try, God just keeps us going. It's like, it's a lot of work to keep that house and the grounds and stuff, but he always comes through to keep it going.
Yeah.
And actually, you guys are getting that grounds ready because Monday we're doing a groundbreaking for the second house on that property.
Nice.
So
that's very exciting.
We're building another 4,000 square foot house, and God wants me to build 4 more on that property.
And how big is the property?
5 acres.
5 acres. Now, are the apple trees still there?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, I came and I remember talking to Deanne about just the potential that's there with fruit trees to learn about pruning and how that is just a very physical representation of what needs to happen in terms of, there's some with fruit trees, you cut out some dead branches. That's easy. It's still
right.
You still got to do it, but then all the diseased limbs you need to prune out, and sometimes you need to prune out things that are just competing for space.
I think if I remember right, when you came, it wasn't the right time of year to do it.
That's
right?
Correct. Yeah.
So it was that in the fall or spring?
I think we came in the spring. I think it was in the spring. Yeah, because you don't want to prune really in the spring. You want to
do it
prune
in the fall.
in
So
the
she
winter.
had someone. She had
winter,
someone come in the fall and get it.
That's good.
So
Good.
we're trying. There's a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
That's cool. So new house coming, and where do your funds for House of Promise come from?
community. It's all the churches, community. I don't take any state or federal funding because I want to talk about Jesus. And actually, I had a call today from a group of people, and they said, "Oh, we don't give to anyone of faith-based." And I said, it's kind of sad because we're the only one around here that does this.
Yeah.
And just because we talk about Jesus shouldn't make a difference. But
I don't know how you deal with people who have experienced such severe trauma without a spiritual component, without God's help. So
you can't. And that's where, and that's what God had showed me in the beginning. At first you're like, okay, when I first started open, it's like, well, we don't cram Jesus down their throat, right. And the more I was doing this and got bolder, and now it's just like, you can't do it without Jesus.
Right.
We still don't cram it down their throat. I mean, if their first question is, where was God? I mean, they're mad at God. Right. So we're not going to be just like pushing that at them. But we know that he's the only one that can heal their brain, their heart, all of those things. And so,
we talk a lot just in terms of how we approach integration of life kind of things, that you don't have to preach for God to be a part of your story. If you're just talking about how God is working in your life, that's rarely is that offensive to someone when you just say, "Oh man, I was praying about this and this happened. I don't get what's going on, but here's all I can." It's like the guy that Jesus healed, that he said, I don't know. All I know is this: I was blind, but now I see.
Yes.
That's all I know.
Yep.
And so when it becomes just a normal part of our conversation, just talking about how God's working, that's people are open to that. Because I think most people, I think you have to be in a pretty bad place to say, there's no God. That it's all it's all made up. Because the evidence for God is all around us. So funding comes from churches, from individuals, from people in the area, companies, that
really
kind of thing.
It. Yep,
Yeah.
that's really it. Like I said, I don't take any state or federal funding. Now, the house that we're building is fully paid for. It's so
that's
that
great.
it was, God just said, it's time to build another house, and I'm like, we need money in this house right now. It's
Yeah.
like, do you remember?
Yeah.
Look at the checkbook. And it's like, and then you don't know if you're really hearing him, and
Right.
so you have that. And I'm like, okay, God, if you want me to do it, then you'll give me a way. And he did. All of a sudden, it was just like, I had someone come and, it was done. So
Yeah.
it's like,
we haven't talked. I haven't talked publicly a lot about House of Promise and Northpointe's involvement. We're not a regular supporter of House of Promise. Maybe shame on us.
I won't say that.
But we have had a partnership in that consistently for the last 3 or 4 years.
Definitely.
We've been able to come out and bring a group to help do things on the ground. That's an easy kind of thing, to rake leaves, to just clean up after the winter, all those kinds of things. And that makes a difference in terms of just showing love and concern for the ladies who live there.
Oh my gosh, you guys have been such a blessing, such a blessing. I mean, you do our spring cleanup every year. It's been amazing. And, I had to call this year and go, okay, we're doing this groundbreaking, so it's really early, and can anybody help me clean up this yard really quick? It's like, and I have to give a shout out to Everett Kramer.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he's like this angel that kind of, we had a storm that came through, and I can't remember when. It's just been the last year, and we had these huge trees that fell in the back of our property, and the lady that had done that kind of work for us, set that stuff up for me, was gone. And so I'm looking, and I'm like, God, I have no idea what to do with this, and I've got so many things to deal with right now. Those trees are just going to lay there, and all of a sudden I get this text from this guy, and he's like, need help? And I'm like, yeah. and it's Everett. He's like, I'm on my way. And I'm like, who are you? He's like, I come out all the time. I'm from Northpointe. And it's like, he did it. He cleaned it all up for us. And, he was out there Saturday doing some stuff. And
that's great.
He's amazing. He's just great. A super nice guy that he loves the Lord. And
yeah. So we've done some stuff. A couple of years ago, we were able to, with our Christmas offering that year, to be able to give a gift. Yeah. I just want to encourage people, as you hear about opportunities for us to help serve in the outdoor stuff or any kind of things that come up, to be a part of that. We're actually going to be there before I think the podcast drops, but there'll be opportunities to do that. The other thing that I would just encourage you to do, if you're able to at all, is to just put on your prayer list House of Promise, Shari Montgomery, for the staff there, for the ladies there, that God's in the work of changing their lives. Because while there's lots of physical pieces, lots of responsibility to teach, lots of steps in that process, God is the one who changes hearts and destinies, and we just need to ask Him to do that.
And the spiritual warfare we go through, and so we do need that. That's one of my goals with one of my staff right now is going to churches and saying, can we be put on your prayer list?
Right.
We need that covering, and especially the bigger we get, the more we're going to be marching into the enemy's territory, and we need that covering.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being a part of our conversation and being a part of Northpointe and being here in the area. And we will look forward to seeing what God has in store in the future.
Thank you for asking me here. Bye.